Little Red Riding Hood. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who lived in a village on the edge of a forest. Wherever she went, she always wore her bright red cloak. So the villagers called her Little Red Riding Hood. One day, Little Red Riding Hood asked her mother if she could go and visit her grandma. Her mother said she could, and gave Little Red Riding Hood a basket of freshly baked bread to take with her. "Remember to go straight to Grandma's house," said her mother. "Please do not dawdle or wander from the path. And most importantly, do not talk to any strangers." "I won't, Mummy, I promise," said Little Red Riding Hood. And she kissed her mother and went on her way. As Little Red Riding Hood was walking through the forest, she found a beautiful patch of wild flowers. She decided that she would pick some for her grandma, completely forgetting her promise to her mother. She sat a while daydreaming amongst the flowers and watching the butterflies. In fact, she was enjoying the summer day so much that she didn't notice a big black shadow creeping up behind her. All of a sudden, a wolf appeared beside her, and in his most friendly voice he said, "Where are you going all by yourself, little girl?" "I'm on my way to see my grandma, and I'm in a terrible hurry," said Little Red Riding Hood, and she ran down the path to her grandma's house. But the wolf was sneaky, and he knew the forest well, so he took a shortcut. When the wolf arrived at Grandma's house, he knocked lightly on the door, and a grandma's voice from inside said, "Goodness me, come in, child. I was beginning to worry. You've been such a long time." As quick as a flash, the wolf burst through the door and swallowed Grandma whole. Pleased with himself and quite full, he then put on one of Grandma's frilly nighties and her sleeping hat. A few minutes passed and there was a knock on the door. The wolf leapt into bed and pulled the covers up to his pointy nose. "Who is it?" he said in the sweetest voice he could manage. "It's me, Grandma, Little Red Riding Hood," came the reply. "How wonderful, my dear. Do come in," said the wolf. When Little Red Riding Hood went into the house, she could hardly recognize her grandma. "Grandma, whatever is the matter? Your voice has changed," she said.
"Oh, I have a bit of a cold, my dear,"
said the wolf, pleased with his own craftiness. "But, Grandma, what big ears you have," said Little Red Riding Hood as she walked closer to the bed.
"All the better to hear you with, my dear," croaked the wolf.
"But, Grandma, what big eyes you have," said Little Red Riding Hood.
"All the better to see you with, my dear," replied the sneaky wolf.
"But, Grandma, what big teeth you have," said Little Red Riding Hood, her voice shaking.
"All the better to eat you with, my dear,"
snarled the wolf as he leapt out of bed to chase Little Red Riding Hood. Realizing this was not her grandma, but a terrible wolf, Little Red Riding Hood ran out of the front door, into the forest, shouting, "Help! Wolf!" A woodcutter who was chopping logs nearby heard Little Red Riding Hood's cry and ran towards her. Just as the wolf was about to pounce, the woodcutter took a giant leap and grabbed the wolf. The wolf was so surprised that he gave a mighty cough, and out popped Grandma. She was a little shaken and slightly smelly, but she wasn't hurt at all. Little Red Riding Hood was so happy. "I won't dawdle in the forest any more, and I will never talk to strangers again," she said. The woodcutter bashed the mean old wolf on the head and sent him far into the forest with a warning never to return. Little Red Riding Hood then had a lovely afternoon with her grandma, and they all lived happily ever after. The Three Little Pigs. Once upon a time, there were 3 little pigs. And when they were old enough, their mother decided it was time for them to seek adventure in the big wide world. So, one sunny morning, they packed their clothes and some sandwiches, and off they went. One day, the 3 little pigs happened upon a lovely woodland clearing, and each thought it was the perfect place to build their houses.
"I am going to build my house from straw," said the first little pig. "There's lots of it, and it will take very little time." "I am going to build my house from sticks," said the second little pig. "There are so many of them in this woodland, and it will take me no time at all." "I am going to build my house from bricks," said the third little pig. "It will be strong and sturdy." His brothers laughed, as they knew the bricks would be heavy and his house would take a long time to build. Theirs would be finished much sooner, and they would be free to play in the sunshine. So the 3 little pigs started to build their houses. One day, the first little pig was in his house of straw, and outside appeared a big, bad wolf. The wolf shouted, little pig, let me in." "Not by the hair on my chinny chin chin," he replied.
"OK," said the wolf. "I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down." So he huffed and he puffed and he blew the straw house down. The little pig was so scared he ran to his brother's house. He told him about the wolf and they hid under the table. Once again the wolf shouted, little pigs, let me in."
"Not by the hair on our chinny chin chins," replied the little pigs.
"Very well," said the wolf. "I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down." So he huffed and he puffed and he blew the stick house down. They were so scared that they ran to their brother's house, the third little pig, and they told him about the big bad wolf. But he wasn't afraid, as he knew his house was built with good strong bricks. Once again, the big bad wolf shouted, little pigs, let me in."
"Not by the hair on our chinny chin chins," replied the 3 little pigs.
So the big bad wolf said, "I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down." And he huffed and he puffed and he huffed and he puffed and he huffed and he puffed. But the house was made of good strong bricks and would not move. The 3 little pigs were very pleased. By now the big bad wolf was very cross, because no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't move the house. He decided to climb onto the roof of the brick house and sneak down the chimney. But the little pig was too clever and had a big pot of soup bubbling over the fire. As the big bad wolf came down the chimney, he caught his bushy tail in the bubbling pot and gave such a scream that it sent him back up the chimney, and he landed outside with a thud. The big bad wolf was so afraid of the 3 little pigs that he ran far into the woods, and from that day forward he was never seen again, and the 3 little pigs lived happily ever after. Cinderella. Once upon a time there lived a beautiful girl called Cinderella. She lived with her father, her wicked stepmother, and her 2 ugly, horrid stepsisters. They were so horrid they made her their servant, and she even slept in the fireplace amongst the cinders. This is why they called her Cinderella. One day she was cleaning the house and scrubbing the floors, with only the mice and a little brown dog for company. Suddenly Cinderella heard a knock at the door. It was a messenger from the royal palace. Prince Charming was having a ball to find himself a bride. Cinderella was very excited. Surely her stepmother and stepsisters would let her go. So Cinderella asked, "Stepmother, can I go to the ball?" her wicked stepmother replied. "Ha! You will not go to the ball. You will stay with the mice and the cinders where you belong." Cinderella went back to the fireplace and she cried. As she was sitting amongst the cinders, she saw a brilliant flash of light. Cinderella wiped away her tears to see a most beautiful lady. "Who are you?" asked Cinderella. "I am your fairy godmother," she replied, "and you shall go to the ball, Cinderella." Cinderella watched in wonder as her fairy godmother gathered 4 mice and with a wave of her magic wand transformed them into 4 magnificent white horses. She then waved her wand over the little brown dog, which magically became a gallant coachman. She took a pumpkin from the shelf, and with a wave of her wand, the pumpkin became a gleaming golden carriage. Finally, the fairy godmother told Cinderella to close her eyes. She waved her magic wand, and when Cinderella opened her eyes, she was no longer wearing rags, but a beautiful gown of silk, with slippers made completely of glass. Cinderella was so happy, and she thanked her wonderful fairy godmother. "Cinderella, you must be sure to return home before the stroke of midnight, for at this time the magical spell will end and everything will return to the way it was," said her fairy godmother. Cinderella promised she would, and she waved from the carriage window as she went on her way to the ball. When Cinderella arrived at the ball, Prince Charming was immediately enchanted by her. Never had he seen a girl of such beauty. They danced and laughed all night, and Cinderella was enjoying herself so much she completely forgot what time it was, until she heard the first strike of midnight. "Oh no!" she cried, as she fled from the palace and down the steps. The prince followed after her, but he could not find the beautiful girl he had danced with. All that remained was a single glass slipper on the steps. Cinderella ran home as her clothes turned to rags, and on the last stroke of midnight, the spell was broken. In the days that followed, the prince searched his kingdom for the owner of the glass slipper, but it did not fit anyone who tried. He finally arrived at the home of Cinderella, but found her ugly stepsisters, who also tried and tried to squeeze their foot into it. When the prince caught sight of Cinderella, he asked her to try on the delicate glass slipper. Cinderella did as he asked, and it fit her perfectly, as she knew it would. Cinderella and Prince Charming were married the very next day, and they lived happily ever after. Goldilocks and the 3 Bears. Once upon a time, there was a little girl with long golden hair that sparkled in the sun. Her name was Goldilocks. Goldilocks lived in the peaceful countryside, and every day, as she went out to play, her mummy would say, "Goldilocks, remember, stay in the meadow and do not wander into the forest, as you will get lost." But although she looked so pretty and well behaved, Goldilocks was sometimes naughty. One day, when her mummy wasn't looking, she wandered into the forest to explore. Goldilocks wandered so far into the forest that she found she was quite lost. She was very frightened and about to cry until she saw a little wooden cottage. Goldilocks peeked through the window of the little cottage, but she couldn't see anyone. She knocked on the door, but no one answered. She gave the door a push, and it crept open. So Goldilocks went inside. In the kitchen there was a lovely fire burning, and the table was set with 3 bowls of steaming hot porridge. It smelled delicious, so Goldilocks picked up a spoon and decided to have a little taste. She tried the biggest bowl first.
"Yuck," she said. "This porridge is too salty."
So she tried the middle bowl.
"Ugh," she said. "This porridge is too sweet."
Then she tried the little bowl.
"Yummy," she said. "This is just right."
And she ate it all up. After eating the porridge, Goldilocks was feeling quite sleepy, so she sat in a big chair by the fire.
"Oh no," she said. "This chair is much too high."
So she sat in the middle chair.
"No, no, this chair will not do either. It is still much too high," she said.
Finally, she sat in the little chair, but it was too small and it broke into pieces.
"Oh dear,"
said Goldilocks, but she was still sleepy, so she decided to go and explore upstairs. Upstairs, Goldilocks found 3 beds. She tried the biggest bed first.
"Ouch," she said. "This bed is too hard."
Then she tried the middle bed.
"Oh no, this bed is too soft," she said.
So she tried the little bed. It was just right, and she fell fast asleep. Goldilocks was still fast asleep when the door to the cottage opened. It belonged to 3 bears. Father Bear, Mother Bear, and Baby Bear had been out in the forest picking fruit to put in their porridge.
"I do hope our porridge has cooled. I'm very hungry," said Baby Bear.
But when they went to the table, they saw that somebody had already been eating their breakfast. "Someone has been eating my porridge," said Father Bear. "And someone has been eating my porridge too," said Mother Bear.
"My bowl is empty. Someone has eaten my porridge all up,"
cried Baby Bear. Then Father Bear saw the chairs. "Someone has been sitting in my chair," he roared. "And someone has been sitting in my chair too," said Mother Bear.
"Someone has been sitting in my chair and it's broken all to pieces,"
cried Baby Bear. Father Bear was very cross, so they all went upstairs to look for the stranger. "Someone has been sleeping in my bed," roared Father Bear. "And someone has been sleeping in my bed," said Mother Bear.
"Someone has been sleeping in my bed," cried Baby Bear, "and she's still there."
The 3 bears looked down at Goldilocks, who was still asleep in Baby Bear's bed. When Goldilocks opened her eyes, she saw the 3 bears standing over her, looking very cross indeed, and she was very frightened. She jumped out of bed, and the bears chased her downstairs and through the front door. She ran as fast as she could and didn't stop until she was home with her mummy. From that day forward, Goldilocks never wandered into the forest again. Snow White. Once upon a time, a lovely queen gave birth to a beautiful baby girl called Snow White. Sadly, when Snow White was still very young, the queen died. After some time, the king remarried, but the new queen was wicked and very jealous of Snow White. As the years passed, Snow White grew very beautiful, and a handsome prince who was riding past the castle saw Snow White and immediately fell in love with her. But this only angered the queen more, for the queen was beautiful as well, and every day she would ask her magic mirror, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" "You are the fairest in the entire kingdom, my queen," replied the mirror, and she was satisfied, as she knew the mirror only spoke the truth. This was the way for many years, until Snow White's 18th birthday, and when the queen asked her usual question, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" "You are fair, my queen, yet fairer still is Snow White. She is fairest of them all," replied the magic mirror. Green with envy and spitting with rage, the evil queen could not bear to look at Snow White any longer. So she ordered her huntsman to take Snow White into the forest and kill her. The very next day, when Snow White was on her morning walk through the forest, the huntsman was set to carry out his task. Just as he was about to kill her, Snow White looked into his eyes, and he knew he could not kill her, for she was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. Instead, the huntsman told Snow White to run away and never to return. Snow White ran far into the forest. She ran until she was too tired to take another step. Alone and scared, she saw a little cottage and stopped to rest. Once inside, she saw that everything was perfectly clean and tidy. The tiny table was set with 7 little plates, 7 little knives, forks and spoons, and 7 little mugs. There were 7 neatly made beds all in a row. Snow White found food and water, and she was so tired that she laid on a little bed and fell asleep. The cottage belonged to 7 dwarfs, and it was nightfall when they returned home. They marched in one by one, whistling a happy tune. Their names were Happy, Bashful, Grumpy, Doc, Dopey, Sneezy, and Sleepy. And every day they would head into the mountains to search for diamonds. "Oh, heavens!" they cried when they saw Snow White sleeping in one of their beds. "What a beautiful child!" So the 7 dwarfs squeezed into 6 beds and let Snow White sleep until morning. Morning came, and Snow White explained the story to the 7 dwarfs. "Please, may I stay here with you for a while?" asked Snow White. The 7 dwarfs were all very sad for her, and agreed to let her stay as long as she liked. In return, every morning, when they would go into the mountains to search for diamonds, Snow White would clean the cottage and cook them a hearty dinner when they returned. One day, happy that Snow White was gone, the evil queen went over to her magic mirror and asked once again, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" "You are fair, my queen, yet fairer still is Snow White. She is the fairest of them all," replied the magic mirror. The wicked queen could not believe her ears, and no matter how many times she asked the question, the answer remained the same. "How can this be?" screamed the queen. When the wicked queen learned that the huntsman did not kill Snow White, she exploded in anger and vowed to find Snow White and kill her. For many days the queen searched for Snow White, until one day she found the little cottage in the forest. Disguised as a sweet old lady, she knocked softly on the door, saying, "Lovely fresh fruits, lovely fresh fruits." Snow White did not recognize her evil stepmother, and thought that the fruits would be very nice for the 7 dwarfs when they came home. So she opened the door. The evil queen insisted that Snow White try one of her lovely red apples. Oh, they looked so delicious that Snow White couldn't resist. But the apple was full of poison, and Snow White fell to the floor. The evil queen laughed and ran from the forest. When the dwarfs returned, they were so upset to see their beautiful Snow White dead on the floor that they gently laid her in a glass coffin and sat with her night and day. But someone else was looking for Snow White. It was the handsome prince who had fallen in love with her. When the prince finally found her in her glass coffin, he would not believe that Snow White was dead, but that she would be awakened with true love's kiss. So the handsome prince bent to kiss her. As he did, Snow White slowly opened her eyes, and the prince lifted her into his arms. When the king learned what the evil queen had done, he banished her from his kingdom forever. Snow White and her handsome prince were married, and they all lived happily ever after.